Hello, this is Steve Barrett. I'm the editorial director of PRWeek, with you again for another edition of Coffee Break, our interviews with senior PR professionals and people doing interesting jobs in the PR world, and especially during this time of lockdown. But we're really delighted to have Kirsten, I got it wrong after all that preparation, from UnitedHealthcare, CCO over there. Welcome, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate getting a chance to talk to you and your listenership.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. And you are obviously speaking from home at the moment, but you have already gone back to work in a sort of phased process. So tell us a little bit about how the working during COVID lockdown has been and how you're managing that transition back into the office.
Thanks. So United Health Group and United Healthcare are an essential business in healthcare. So we have started the transition back to the office. We started with our senior-most leadership team just to make sure that everything was working, test out all the protocols, all the things that we've been putting in place in order to make it safe for our employees to come back. We've now rolled back our ELT and SLT, which is our senior-most leaders in the company. And then on June 15th, we'll begin bringing back the first waves of our greater employee population. And what we're doing, like many companies, is we're looking at a variety of different things that we can do to really make sure that employees who are coming back are safe to be in the workplace. We have an app that actually we worked on with Microsoft called Protect Well, that allows our employees to enter their symptoms, if they have any, into an app-based system. And depending on what their symptoms say, if they have any, they would be told either you need to stay at work, stay home, or you need to see the doctor, or you need to go and have a test. And of course, if they don't have any symptoms, then they're cleared to come into the office. So we have that, along with a variety of other measures, from increased cleaning and signage and limiting our occupancy in conference rooms. And then the most complicated part really has just been, how do we social distance? So we're working in phases where we have the yellow team and the blue team, where the yellow team will come back and they may stay in the office for 1 or 2 weeks, then they will exit, and the next team will come in order to provide for adequate social distancing for everyone when they're in.
Yeah, well, we shall get some hints from you when we eventually go back in New York City. So that'll be an interesting process. Of course, you are, I think, the biggest healthcare company by revenue in the whole world. Just explain how the structure works. You're the CCO for United Healthcare. Jennifer is the head of comms for United Healthcare Group. Just quickly explain to viewers what the difference is between those two elements of the business.
Yeah. Sure, I'm happy to. And of course, when your name is very similar to your parent company name, there's often confusion. So United Health Group is our parent company, and Jen Whitlow, as you mentioned, is the CCO for United Health Group. And then we have two operating companies. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for United Healthcare, which is the insurance company or the benefits company. And then our sister company, Optum, is our partner in many activities, but they have pharmacy benefit manager in OptumRx. They have a whole division that's focused on care, primarily primary care, where we own physician practices around the country. And then we also have a group called Optum Insight, which really primarily focuses on data and analytics. And they are actually Optum is a consultant to many companies that would be competitive to United Healthcare. So that's why we structure the way that we do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Now, you're a Minnesota-based business with your headquarters, and obviously with the events of the last couple of weeks and the killing of George Floyd, which has caused all sorts of repercussions and protests, and just been a very sad event and highlighted issues of racial injustice around the country. Just tell me a little bit what the experience has been like as a business operating in that area, and also how have you been communicating with your employees, and what's United Health's sort of stance in terms of taking views on social issues like this?
Yeah, you're right. It has been a tremendously sad and difficult time, not just for us in Minneapolis, but for the world, and certainly for the country. Obviously, this one has hit really close to home for us. It's been just extremely sad as a city to watch what's happening. So we've done a few things as a company. The first is our CEO, Dave Wickman, throughout the COVID crisis, he had been doing daily broadcasts to our employees, which is something we've never done before, but daily broadcasts where he talked about a number of different issues related to the COVID crisis. And so when this incident happened, the murder of George Floyd happened in Minneapolis, it was kind of natural because although we had scaled that from daily to a couple times a week, it was really natural for him to get on and address it with our employee population. He chose to do so with the head of our Inclusion and Diversity Council from both UnitedHealthcare and Optum. And so he had those two leaders on his daily broadcast. And it was kind of a raw discussion just about what had happened, how they were personally dealing with that crisis, how they were working with their teams and helping them through the crisis. And then, of course, he announced, and you may have seen it in the news, that UnitedHealth Group was giving $10 million to the city of Minneapolis to both help address, through the YMCA, to address racial inequities, and then also to businesses that were impacted in the community. And then lastly, we announced that we were donating money for George Floyd's children to have a college fund or whatever they choose to do in their later life. That was very personal for our leadership to do our part to help take care of them in whatever way that we could.
Yeah, it's such an awful situation. We saw Philando Castile 4 years ago, also in Minnesota, killed by police. We've seen Michael Brown in Ferguson, in Missouri. You know, we've seen this, and that was 6 years ago. I think what a lot of Black people say is, when is this racial injustice going to end? Because it seems to be systemic, and just to come back and nothing changes. We do seem to have something of a leadership vacuum. How do you feel as a communicator and as a purposeful business leader? What role should business play, and how can they demonstrate leadership, which perhaps is lacking in other parts of our society at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think what's happening is society is looking to business more and more to take a stand, because they're seeing that void in other parts of the system, and of course business can play an incredible role in helping to bring education, awareness, and resources to social issues. I would just say that, you know, my personal belief is, of course, these things are very personal to every company. Every company is in a different place on their journey of what feels right to them. And so, you know, I think companies first and foremost have to be authentic to who they are in order to make sure that their response, you know, is appropriate. But I do think we're seeing more and more companies begin to step out. This is actually one of the first times that UnitedHealth Group chose to step out. Obviously, it was in our own backyard, so that made it even more compelling for us to do so. But we really, although, you know, our fight is primarily in healthcare and helping to make sure that everybody has access to quality, affordable, easy to understand health. You know, we can't ignore the fact that these are issues that affect our employees, and that our employees are looking for us to make sure that we are doing our part to create a workplace that is safe and inclusive, and that we're also doing our part to make sure that, you know, they know that that we care about these issues, and that we're going to do what we can, especially in the ways that are unique to us in healthcare, that we can give back and try and advance where this stuff has to go.
Yeah, the employee engagement piece seems incredibly important, both in the issues around racial injustice, but also in the wider COVID period, where a lot of people have been working from home. And you mentioned that the CEO was doing daily briefings. Just talk a little bit more about how employee engagement has developed at your organization, and also maybe in the PR industry generally, and become almost like the first line of external communications.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it has. I mean, so we have really been looking at how we can engage with employees differently than all of the old traditional ways. I'll give you a couple of examples. So we actually launched this year an employee app. It's called Spark. And we have a lot of people who we call on the front line who are on the telephones answering customer service calls. They are processing claims. They're out in communities servicing and taking care of members, and they don't have easy access to a desktop or an email. And so we really wanted to start thinking more about how do we create avenues that make it easier for us to connect with our employees and tell them what they're needing to know. And that includes producing a lot more content that is oriented to them and that begins to do, I think a better job of segmenting our own employees and knowing that certain kinds of employees are looking for certain information, other people want others, and we've done that traditionally, obviously by levels. So sometimes, we'll talk to leaders and then we'll talk to all employees, but we're just trying to get more and more sophisticated in terms of how we think about the unique needs of our employees in the same way that we do that externally with consumers or with other constituents that we engage with on the external side.
So you're the biggest healthcare company in the world, and it seems like everything is going to be healthcare related for the next, well, who knows how long, maybe forever. And, if you think about after the 9/11 terrorism incident, our behaviors changed completely. So in airports, we got used to taking our shoes off. We got used to certain security elements that we would never have thought of before. And I suspect we're going to have to get used to things now that we'd never have thought of before that are going to become, everyday occurrences like masks maybe and the social distancing. How do you think that's going to play out? And as a big healthcare player, what's your role in taking us forward to a healthy future and making sure that people feel comfortable about traveling into work, about going to work, about being in the workplace, and just generally their health and well-being generally?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot has changed with COVID, and I think it is going to create a new kind of environment for everyone, starting with, just as you said, being comfortable wearing a mask and socially distancing, even after maybe the worst of the crisis is over, limiting your air travel. All of those things are normal things that I think businesses and consumers in general are looking at. For us, what we're also seeing is people are starting to change the way they're engaging with the health system. So I'll just give you one example. Obviously, during COVID, one of the biggest things that happened is people stopped going in for elective procedures. They stopped going to the hospital unless you were really sick. You just kind of stayed away. And we saw a huge spike in what we call either virtual visits or telehealth, meaning, how do we engage with the system where we can still potentially get the care that we need, but we don't necessarily have to do it face-to-face, where we may be putting ourselves or our family or even the healthcare providers at risk. And so I think telehealth is going to just continue to grow. And as a company that clearly takes care of more than 50 million people, in the United States and across the world, we're looking at how do we use technology more to both get better care, make it more simple, make it more efficient, but also reduce the cost of healthcare. And so I think you're going to see, just as one example, more and more people saying, if I have a follow-up appointment, if I have a chronic condition and I have a follow-up appointment where, they're largely just kind of checking in, maybe I can do that via telehealth. I get to see my own doctor, not some doctor that I don't know. And it doesn't quite cost quite as much to go in for a visit, and I stay protected. So those are the kinds of things that I think we're going to see, just more and more use of technology in order to have a better experience and stay safe, and at the same time continue to try and drive down the cost of healthcare, which is just too darn expensive.
Yeah. to that. I've had a telehealth appointment during the lockdown, and actually I did think, wow, this is actually great. And you're not going into a physical environment where there's, by definition, a lot of germs hanging around. Obviously doctors' surgeries, they keep them clean as possible, but that's just a fact. And it's quicker as well. You don't have so much waiting around, and so if you don't need a physical examination, that definitely does seem like one of the things that are going to change. And look forward to seeing how you tell those stories, Kirsten. And thank you for joining us on Coffee Break. It's been great to catch up and chat. And good luck back in the office.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. And stay safe. And we'll talk again soon.
All right, take care.
Take care.